President, with all due respect, that not one of these soldiers cast a ballot on that fateful Good Friday night in the spring of 1917 to force a peace-loving nation like ours to take up arms for the profiteers and the exploiters of mankind.
We've tried the Republican Party, we've tried the Democratic Party, then we've gone back and tried the Republican Party, and now we're back trying the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, whenever we get into power with either one of these parties, we find that the one crying need of our people, the redistribution of wealth, so that none would be too poor and none would be too rich, is always neglected by the party that is in power.
How many men ever went to a barbecue and would let one man take off the table what's intended for 9/10 of the people to eat? The only way you'll ever be able to feed the balance of the people is to make that man come back and bring back some of that grub he ain't got no business with.
In Europe, a man by the name of Rothschild, who claimed to be Jewish, made this statement. He really didn't care who was king or ruler, as long as he controlled the finance. Rothschild had 5 sons, and he sent those sons into different parts of Europe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
He sent one son to England, one to France, one to Italy, one to Austria, and one stayed at home with the father in Germany.
Yes, sir.
And they all became a part of the house of Rothschild, but through manipulation of money, the son in England grew up, and that became the Bank of England, the Bank of France, the Bank of Italy, the Bank of Austria, the Bank of Germany. These were central banks that printed the money of these nations that now were in the hands of a family that had spread out with not the intention of doing good, but the intention to become manipulators and controllers of the destiny of the world and nations.
Come on. Come on. Go ahead.
Europe had many conflicts.
Yes. Yes.
And the Rothschilds would finance both sides.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
During the period between the 15th and 19th century, new empires emerged and again waged war for supremacy. The nobility, as well as the thriving merchant class, were financed by a handful of private banks. Many of the great money houses would hedge their bets and finance both sides of a war. Sophisticated intelligence-gathering networks gave the financiers a clear edge over the governments they were slowly gaining control of. On the 18th of June, 1815, agents of the British arm of the Rothschild family looked on as Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte fought desperately to save his army from the jaws of a British-Prussian pincer attack. A Rothschild agent was able to get the news of Napoleon's defeat at the hands of Lord Wellington to Nathan Rothschild, a full 20 hours before the news reached London. Nathan, the head of the British arm of the Rothschild family, put out the rumor to the London Stock Exchange that Napoleon had won the war. Stocks plunged by 98%, and Rothschild was then able to buy up the entire British economy for pennies on the pound. When the news of Napoleon's defeat finally arrived, stocks soared. Britain was now the undisputed ruler of Europe, and Rothschild ruled England.
Pour compléter cette révolution, il y a eu la création de la Réserve fédérale en décembre 1913.
La plupart des sénateurs étaient retournés chez eux pour Noël. Dans le milieu législatif, c'est ce qu'on appelle une opération bien huilée. Toute l'affaire s'est passée sans tambour ni trompette. Le président a signé, c'est devenu une loi de notre pays.
À peine une décennie après la fondation de la Réserve fédérale, qu'est-ce qui arrive? Tout simplement la plus grande dépression de ce siècle.
Pendant les 16 mois qui ont précédé le krach de 1929, la Réserve fédérale a augmenté la masse monétaire de 62%. Ce qui est arrivé ressemble beaucoup à ce qu'on vit aujourd'hui. Les gens achetaient, vendaient, garantissaient, empruntaient en pensant que cette abondance n'aurait pas de fin. Puis, au moment du krach, ils ont cessé d'augmenter la masse monétaire et ceux qui avaient mis en garantie leurs actions, leurs obligations, leurs maisons, leurs autos et leurs comptes d'épargne ont tout perdu.
Dès 1916, le président Wilson commence à avoir des remords. Il déclare « La croissance de notre nation et toutes nos activités sont entre les mains de quelques hommes. » Vers la fin de sa vie, Wilson admet qu'il a été trompé et qu'on l'a forcé à signer cette loi. On prétend qu'avant de mourir, il a murmuré « J'ai involontairement ruiné mon gouvernement ».
La plupart des sénateurs étaient retournés chez eux pour Noël. Dans le milieu législatif, c'est ce qu'on appelle une opération bien huilée. Dans le milieu législatif, c'est ce qu'on appelle une opération bien huilée.
Vous avez caché un plan bien huilé.
Ouais. Eh ben, puisqu'il est si bien huilé, ton plan, tu sais où tu peux te le carrer.
Franchement, c'est pas très malin.
Nous allons prochainement lancer un grand emprunt dont je prédis par avance qu'il sera un succès, ce que jamais aucun gouvernement français n'a tenté en période préélectorale.